And so, a way that lots of people were trying to take action was through social media. And when it comes to the general public, a lot of the times it seems like when people are not directly affected by this, the mass sometimes eventually loses interest and it sort of becomes this trend. And obviously, for people who are affected by it constantly, it's never just this trend. And so, do you think that this movement, this most recent movement, will kind of follow that same tragic path of this is just another trend for, the mass uh, of social media? Like, for
Mm.
example, the Australia wildfires or the Hong Kong protests, majority of the social media engagement died off far before the issues themselves.
Mm. I like that question because it I think a lot of us now, by being at home because of the pandemic, have been exposed to realities that we perhaps weren't aware of. Um, these tragedies were always happening, and these protests always took place. But I don't think all of us at once sat down and experienced them or witnessed them. And with George Floyd, I think it's just how heinous the crime was is what caused that big of an uproar. To your point, though, I'm talking with a friend a few days ago, and in forms of being anxious and things, I said, is my life as as minuscule as the Dalgona coffee that came and went, you know? And so with such things, I don't think they hold um power in people's lives. Number one, as you said, because people don't experience it day to day. So for a person of color and a person that is black in this moment, my activism did not stop because people stopped, because it affects me directly, right? And for those people that stopped, I would ask them to think, what made you stop? There's people still, like out there fighting the good fight. What was it in that week that made you want to do it but not to continue it? Because it has stopped. I even noticed with my Instagram feed, it has changed. And so I wonder what it is that makes people get involved. Is it that you don't want to seem not woke? But now that people have moved on, you've moved on. But with such humanitarian causes, I would compel people to question themselves. Why am I doing this? Why am I posting this? What's the point? What message am I trying to send? Because I think if you do that and you go to the core of why these movements are happening and you look at what the core message of it is and what they're trying to fight for, it would be, I would think, extremely difficult for you to stop, because there is that humanist aspect of it. And again, with social media, I'm very thankful for it, but also at the same time, it's that good evil type of thing where something, if you overpump it, people get really bored over time. And so it's both sides. It's both. I don't think it has died yet, but I also think it's not as much as it used to be.
Yeah, absolutely. And something that I'm often thinking to myself is that one of the grander overarching problems with the world in general is a lack of empathy. And,
Mhm.
like you said, when the fight never stops for people who are affected by it, why should
Mhm.
it stop for people who aren't?
Yeah.
And so, Akin, did you have anything to add on that note?
Oh yes, yes. I think um again, it's just being in these kinds of conversations. I've had this so many times, like, and what I've realized, like, it's almost never ends because one thing you find out is at the end of the day that these things are extremely complicated. I met one of my professors. I'm sure Heaven would know Simone Horvitz.
Yes.
Surprise, surprise! She lives right close to my area, so we went on a walk a couple times, and we were just talking about these issues. And I told her how I've finally made up my mind to study political studies, going in from next year. And part of the reason why is because I've always been passionate about these things. But then I have been so involved to the point where I've realized I can actually almost do nothing. Like I feel so inadequate. And it's like with all the change, all the work, all the protest, all the advocacy, it's like nothing is really changing. Reason being because we don't understand the system. We don't understand how complicated these things are. Like the whole political infrastructure. It's like it's a real engine. And because it's politics, everyone says it, so everyone just complains, and it's like, yeah, this is what they should do. Yeah, it's this guy that is bad, it's that guy that is bad. But if you actually sit down and put yourself in those places, then you see how complicated things are, and which leads to my next point, which is that change actually takes a long time. Like real change, sustainable change. And I feel like, our generation, it's a good thing. I was listening to Barack Obama's and the Democratic Party rallied it like for Joe Biden. And he says that a lot, how he's so happy that our generation, we are much more aware and we are much more engaged in civil discourse. We are much more woke. People say that too. He didn't say the word woke, but that's kind of the connotation. But the problem with being that woke is we want that change so bad that we are not even realistic about how it's going to happen. Like, and again, even with this George Floyd's case, there's so many reasons why it seems special. First of all, we have social media technology, like, and also everyone has been at home for how many months, so everyone was already pissed and there was already so many stress there. So when this was like just another trigger and everyone just poured out, so I feel like even all the protests, it's not just anger against George Floyd, it's just anger in general. It's summer, people are stuck at home, they can't go to work, they can't go to school, so all that thing also plays a role in why it was so big. And also, even regardless of that, again, real change takes real time. No matter how much laws you want to put in place, you can't legislate love. Like, I think it's Denzel Washington who says such. Like, you really can't force people. Although I hate racism, but how do I actually get them to make that change? Which leads to my next point, social media. So, social media makes everything accessible. Like you literally have the whole world at your fingertips. However, when people, like for instance, when there were those black squares going on Instagram, many people just put up, all these social media posts, and it's so easy to do, again, just at your fingertips. But when they do that, there's the advantage that they create more awareness, but there's this disadvantage where there's the peer pressure aspect of it. So Heaven was talking about how why has it just died down so quickly? Because on social media, all your friends are doing it, like, and you just feel like at some point, I put out some things on social media and I was like, do I really believe in these things? Like, why did I actually do it? Is it because everyone is doing it? And if you do that because everyone else is doing it, then no matter what motive you think, I just think it's wrong because it's not genuine. It's just for virtue signal. You want to look like you two, are, again, as Heaven said, you two, are woke and you also support black people. Whereas some of these people are actually racist themselves. But when they put the thing on social media, they appear like, oh, they're the good guys. And everyone else who didn't put it on social media is racist. So it's like when people do that, it distracts from the real work, which takes more time, takes more conversations, takes more diligence. Like for instance, I find like in my job, again, my at the True Alive Youth and Family Foundation, it is so hectic and so busy because there's so much planning that has to go in. And like I realized, like, to go and put some of the good work we are doing on social media, it actually takes out time from the real work we are doing. So what you find is that people who are doing the real work to create a much inclusive society, you don't see them as much as on social media because they are doing the real work. But people who spend all their time just making social media noise, they are not doing anything. So it's like that's part of why you don't see any real change because everyone is just, again, just on social media, and it's creating awareness, which is a good thing. But in their own personal lives, they're still racist. In their, I talk about how people talk about slavery a lot. My grandma still owns slaves, and because where I come from, it is normal, absolutely normal. So when I'm complaining about slavery, like I'm like, I need to talk to my grandma too because she's doing the same thing. Like many of my friends and family, they are doing the same thing. When you talk about racism, you go to some, for instance, no offense, but my conversation with Indian folks, and like they too would admit to themselves that they might actually be more racist than some white people. So it's like the real work is more complicated and it's much more real if people want to confront it, but just doing everything on social media, it's gonna create awareness, but it's not gonna solve the real issue. So I hope I didn't take too much time on that tangent,
No, no,
but
no, that's all
yeah,
right.
that's my
I love
piece.
to hear it. Everything you say, it's very, very valuable. Um, and yeah, like just to kind of go back to on what you guys were saying there, like take the blackout Thursday, posting the black squares, and back to why people were doing that, right? It could have been, more about peer pressure than it was about people actually believing in it. People saw, you know, everyone's posting these black squares. And honestly, I woke up, saw everyone was posting black squares to their Instagram and that it said Black Lives Matter. And so I went, oh, I guess I better post a black square and say Black Lives Matter. But
Mm,
then, 30 minutes later, I'm told by a friend, maybe this isn't such a good idea because there was some controversy regarding that. And I had to question myself. I woke up,
mm,
saw that people were doing it, and then did it. But I didn't wake up and think that day, I'm going to
mm,
make a post, advocating for Black Lives Matter. I woke up, saw other people were doing it, and then did it myself. And I
mm,
think that I'm guilty there. That's part of the wrong mentality as to why I should have been doing that, because I was participating in a social media trend instead of
mm.
making positive change.